Sir, please begin.
We can start now, Dr. Ramesh.
Very good morning and good. Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. So good morning all, and good morning to all the friends and the morning students and the media professionals. In the connection of this webinar series, today we have the renowned speaker and with us, Aruna Roy, madam, and we welcome to you, ma'am, on PU webinar platform on behalf of the Parel University and Parel University family. So, is a degrees and member of Mazdoor Kisan Sangathan. National came to the People Right Information CPR and the Democracy SFD. She was with the IS from the 1968 to 1975. In 1995, she came to the district.
I think there is some network issue. Just 2 minutes. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Yes, sorry, due to some technical glitches. So, Madam Aruna Roy is the social policy activities, the founder member of the Mazdoor Shakti Sangathan, MKS, and campaign to the People Formation and PRI. And the school, due to some technical glitches, I'm extremely very sorry for that. And the School of the Democracy, she was with the IS from the 1968 to 1975. 1975, she came to the Ajmer district, Rajasthan, to work with the SWRC and the rural poor. In 1996, she moved to the life with the poor in the village called the Dev Dungi, Rajasthan district in Rajasthan. In 1990, she was part of the group that set up MKS. She has the word for the asserting the constitutional rights for the poor right to information, employment, and the Food Security Act. She was a member of the National Advisory Council NAC from the 2004 to 6 and the 2010 to 13 and the 2014. She was a member of the sitting committee of the Open Government Participants OGP till 2014. And currently is a cabinet and the council member of Progressive International. She is president of National Federation of the Indian Women NFIW. She was the professor of the pediatrics at the McGill University ISID and the Montreal, Canada, and the 2016 and the George Stars and the visiting practitioner, the chair in the CEU. Budapest, and the awarded including the Raman Magsaysay Award in 2000, the Nani Palkiwala Award, and she also received the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award. She was listed as one of the 100 most influenced people in the world by the Times Magazine for 2011. So on behalf of the Parel University, ma'am, we welcome you, ma'am. And we also have the Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor M.N. Patel, sir. Dr. M.N. Patel is the passion, the driven educationist and the visionary who has made a significant mark in the scope of the higher education within the state of the Gujarat and the nation of India, and the currently stand as the provost of the Parel University. A bachelor's in the civil engineering degree holder from the SP University and the master of the civil structure specialist from the Gujarat University with a PhD from the DD University, Nanded. His unique academic career is characterized by his adherence towards the continuous education. And Professor Patel, throughout his career tenure, he has made the significant contributions toward the growth, expansion, and the development of the higher education. He has worked as the Vice Chancellor of the Gujarat University for a period of the 3 years as a Principal LD College of the Engineering, Ahmedabad, Gujarat for the 10 years as the Member Secretary. And the Admission Committee for the Professional Courses, Gujarat Vice Chancellor, officiating as the Gujarat Technical University, Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and the professor and the principal at the Gujarat Engineering College, Modasa, In addition to his prominent distinction, he has also invested his extra efforts through membership in the various committees, such as the member of AIU, Association of the Indian Universities, the Governing Council, member of the governing body in Indian Institute of the Management, Ahmedabad, IIMA, and a member in the inquiry committee by the UGC, member of the academic governing body of the Autonomous College, the Institute Saint Xavier Science College, and the BVM Nagar, and the member of the Staff Affairs Committee of the on behalf of the Parul Institute of Arts, we welcome to you, sir. And now I request you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to please say a few words and the bliss to us. And after that, I will request to Honorable Chief Guest of today's webinar, a journey of the Right to Information Act, Srimati Aruna Roy, Madam. So now I request you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, please say a few words and the bliss to us. So we can start this.
Namaskar to one and all. Especially welcome to Srimati Aruna Roy as consented to be the speaker of today's our webinar. My Dean, Institute of Arts, my other colleagues, and my dear viewers. Madam, I will tell that now the entire teaching system is changed from that blended teaching to a virtual teaching. And being at Parul University, we have more than 28,000 students, and all are so accustomed that all or everything is in form of a e-learning. So presently this webinar, no doubt in a link we are very few, but so many thousands of students or thousands of years, they are just observing or they are here just seeing these programs. And we are lucky enough that we have that well-established system. No doubt little difficulty we have faced for connectivity, but we have increased our bandwidth from 1.1 gigabyte to 411 gigabyte. So every day we have in the period of this online more than 2,000 lectures which we are doing within the university. As our more than 300 classrooms are in a smart classroom. As we have taken the steps so that the entire virtual teaching can be done, and we are well accustomed to it. And as whatever lectures are done, we are recording each and every one, and that record is given to the in future also when it is required. At the same time, it is given to the teacher or speaker so that they can improve somewhere where they have played some mistake, or we can say that for our teacher it is a micro teaching system. So like that way, this is a learning system for us. Our all teachers became very speedy, very smart, and very rather I can say that interested to learn the new thing. At a time, so many things can be covered when we are connecting virtually. As you are sitting somewhere away from here, but we can talk with each other. So we are lucky enough that the people like you have consented to be the part of our webinar series. Every day we are having almost 8 to 10 webinar calling the stalwart people like you. And our student especially, they are the most beneficiary of the talk like this. Now today's topic is right to act, right to information. As I am from the government setup, no doubt presently with 3-4 years, I am with Parul University, which is one of the most fast growing private university in the Western India. But prior to that, I have spent more than 35 years in the government, in the sizable position of 2 state university vice chancellor and one of the best college of engineering in Gujarat, that is LD College of Engineering. So being a government setup, the importance of right to information, which we are knowing very well. Every day we are getting thousands of query through RTI that this information, and it is good that we are making everything or every administration to a transparent. Government has made a lot of such rule, but at the same time, it is good for the people to know each and everything. But there are some people, those who are creating some problem, unnecessary asking the information, and we faced a lot of difficulty, especially when I was with the state university, which was very old. It was established in 1948. So many information they are asking from us, and it became very much difficult for us to find out all such information. I can give you another example. When I was Vice Chancellor Gujarat University, one of the rather I don't say activist, but one of the person from AAP from Delhi has asked regarding the degree of Prime Minister, because he was alumni of Gujarat University. So such type of situation which put us into embarrassing condition. No doubt the information was there, but whether to declare it is old information, 30-year-old information, not to declare, and so many things we have learned from the RTI. But as being RTI is one of the important tools as so far to make the transparency and our administration powerful, I think it should be there, and people should take the most advantage of it. Today, I think whatever your experience being an IAS officer, naturally you have come across so many situations and the importance of RTI that you can narrate very nicely. So our all viewers, including our all faculty members and students, will definitely get benefited. So again, Madam, I welcome you to Parul University and hope so that our deliberation will definitely give a lot of impact to our routine administration. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Ramesh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your blessings words and the enlight to us. And now I request to Madam Aruna Roy, ma'am, please start your speech and enlight to us and enlight to the participants. And I'm going to share the screen and your presentation. Just a minute, madam.
May I begin?
Madam, I share, you see this? Yes, start, please. Now, ma'am, and now I request you, ma'am, please. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can begin.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, the faculty of Parul University, students and friends. It's indeed a pleasure to be talking to you all today about the right to information, an act which has actually been the most important act post the gaining of independence in our country. In a sense, it has made us realize real independence. It has made us realize sovereignty. It has made us understand how in a democracy, we as citizens are responsible for governance, for policy, and for making the government work better for its poor. I am going to talk to you today about a law that has been rated the third best law in the world. I'm going to talk to you about a law which is used by 6 to 8 million Indians every year, 60 to 80 lakhs or 6 to 8 million users every year. This is an extremely popular act. It's one of the most popular acts passed by any government in this country. It is a law that is most widely understood and used in this country. But where in fact did it all begin? In front of you, you see a small hut made out of mud and stone, where I live and lived. I live occasionally now, but I lived continuously for 2 decades. And it's from this small, humble cottage that actually this whole campaign began. This campaign began because there were people who wanted or needed the Information Act for their daily livelihood. So from a small struggle to a huge understanding shared in the public domain, because of corruption, because of collusion, and because of pilferage, people's lives were affected. If you do not get the vaccine in time after a cobra bites you, you die. If you do not get adequate food for a number of days from the PDS, that is the ration shop, your family is in hunger. So we had to engage with the system, but also make it work. So therefore, struggle, advocacy, campaign, and movement. It's a cyclical process. So I'll first speak about the struggle. So the struggle began with this small, humble cottage in which 15 of us are full-time workers. We do not draw any funds from any funded agency anywhere in India or anywhere else. We are crowd-funded. We are funded by friends and by people in the village who contribute grain and other materials to us to help us live through. We earn the minimum wage of Rajasthan, the agricultural minimum wage, and we have continued to live like that for the last 30 odd years. It is from this place that we began our lives, and it's a huge understanding which has grown from a small struggle. The first struggle was for the struggle for the right to livelihood and the right to minimum wage. And this minimum wage struggle led us all from this village into a huge struggle. Let us go to the second slide and we will see what Gandhi had to say, Mahatma Gandhi had to say. about Gandhi described the India of his dreams. And he said he wanted an India in which the poorest shall feel that it's their country and in whose making they have an effective voice. An India in which all communities shall live together in perfect harmony. There can be no room in such an India for the curse of untouchability or the curse of intoxicating drinks and drugs. Women will enjoy the same rights as men. A free India able to take its decisions for its people and their freedom from hunger and enable them to dream. How do you actually achieve this? In this process, third slide, please, Dr. Ambedkar framed the Indian Constitution. And in the Indian Constitution, framing of the Indian Constitution, he said, on the 26th of January, 1950, we are going to enter into life of contradictions. In politics, we have equality, and in economic and social life, we'll have inequality. In politics, we'll be recognizing the principle of one man, read, one person, one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall be denied the structure of equality. How long shall we continue to live this life of contradictions? How long shall we continue to deny equality in our social and economic life? We must remove this contradiction. And so he felt that if this equality was not achieved, of social and economic equality, actually the country itself would be in ruins. Why was the structure of the architecture of the Constitution so important? Because the Constitution has many parts, as all of us Indians know. But the first chapter on fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy have clearly delineated our roles. The chapter on the directive principles of state policy outlines the dreams of a modern India. What should modern India look like? How should it actually deal with the problem of inequality, with the problem of the last person whom you see on the screen? How do we deal with a manner in which those children go to school? That person on the screen has enough to eat and enough to work. So between Gandhiji and Dr. Ambedkar, they designed a new vision for India in which India would be free, but India would be secular, India would be equal, India would have fraternity, and it would have liberty, and it would have the ability to deal with its multifarious obligations, but in a constitutional frame in which there were obligations to the state, obligations to each other, and obligations of the individual also to the structure. In this entire thing, we cannot forget this last person who has in fact been the important man or the person against whom the whole thing has been built. So what do we do in terms of dealing with it? When in Rajasthan, people like this person you see on the screen asked for minimum wages, they were denied. After working for 8 hours in the sun, they asked for their wages and they were denied. It was in the structure of denial that actually the entire constitutional history began. But in the constitutional history of India began dealing with this issue of poverty, is dealing with the issue of inequality and how best we could deal with it. What the Right to Information Law actually did was made this person on the screen realize his, and there are women, so her sovereignty. And how can you make that vote, which you drop into the ballot box, or now you press a finger on an EVM machine, deliver to you? Because after all, when you send a representative in to rule for you, become a member of parliament, a member of the legislative assembly, or a member of the panchayat, you're giving them the right to actually work on our behalf. We are not giving them the liberty to work without consultation or without our consent, and definitely without corruption. We do not want corruption. So when corruption came as a front face between people and the system then demanded that we go into a phase in which we ask for. So democracy, actually in democratic institutions like us, asked for the right to know. It is important to know, to be transparent, for a genuine dialogue to take place between between people and the people and the democratic institutions. How do you establish that these voices of protest actually, which are based on genuine logic and genuine justice, reach the institutions which will then deliver for us? The vote has actually, unfortunately, become much more of a market-based mechanism than a democratic vote, which will actually deliver constitutional rights, deliver us models of development, and tell us how the history can be reversed of this inadequacy and of this inequality, where we now have a system which listens more to the people who have power than to the powerless. But it is for the powerless that there is a constitution. It is for the powerless that there is a democracy. So in that, we need to ask ourselves many questions. So what were the questions these poor people asked themselves? Where are the mandated spaces for dialogue and discussion? Where are we? Are we innovative, committed, and persistent? Are we fair, honest, and equal in access to rights, economic, political, and social? Do we have the freedom to critique? Can we speak of sustainability, but can we do so in an atmosphere of not labeled anti-state when we speak of sustainability? Is there a room for dissent? Is there a room for discussion? And does the state actually protect democratic spaces? These are the learnings from the right to information, but that the story is what? The story is that we had, can we go to the 8th slide, please? So there was much more than the 5 years of waiting and changing the election and to change a government. We had to understand that we had to really get into a position where we could negotiate with government. Can you go to this 9th slide, please? So when people went and asked for their wages, they were told that you are telling lies, that you did not work, and it became impossible for people to understand how to negotiate between them and the government. So in negotiating with the government, we discovered that government was not willing to face or examine our truth. And between the government, and government is not one monolith, it consists of layers and layers of individuals. It has the bureaucracy, it has the permanent government, it has, can you please go to slides 8 and 9, please? So can you please go to slide 8 and 9, please? So we had a situation where we took matters into our own hands, we accessed information, and we had public hearings. And you can see a photograph of the public hearing, but unfortunately, screen sharing is showing another slide. Can we go to slide number 9, please? Can we go to slide number 9? So we started a whole campaign for presenting information in the public domain. Can we go to slide number 9, please? There is a photograph. Can we go to slide number 9, please? So in that, we went and organized people with fairness, with justice, asked them to look at the information and look at the information that we had received from the government about labor lists, about money spent in the government. We showed it to them and asked them where the truth lay. We went and actually audited the structures. We looked at the work conditions, and we also looked at the works. After that, we had something called a Jan Sunbai, or a public audit. And in these public audits, we had 4 demands. Transparency of information. All information in the panchayat should be made transparent. All monies defrauded because of various corruption levels should be returned to the panchayat. And we said that this money should be accounted for. Whoever was accountable for this information should be made responsible. And lastly, we asked for a public audit. Now, this, if you go to the next slide as well, please. I don't know which slide you're showing. There is one slide which says our money, our accounts. So we had these extraordinary number of public hearings in which, in a peaceful, non-violent, and totally Gandhian way, We asked questions of our government, and it is true that we are the sovereigns in the democratic process, and people who rule us are actually our representatives. The representative has to answer his authority. So when people ask questions, when they are within the constitutional mode and constitutional morality, we are legitimate. And so since we derive from Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, right to information derives from Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, and we exercise our right within the constitutional frame, we had these public audits, and in audit after audit, it was proved that actually in this corruption levels were enormous and money was being siphoned off. It's at that point that we decided to have an act. From struggle, we went into advocacy. We found that government did not respond to us. Then we went into a protest again. We went and sat for 40 days in a public protest in a place called Biawar in Rajasthan in 1996. Sat for 40 days. We collected 80,000 rupees in public donations. There was a transparency chart in the public protest, and we ate up 20 tons of grain, contributed 4 kilos from every household, from 400 households. We got households, some 4, some 1 kilo, some half a kilo, whatever grain they were eating. And it is then that it became a campaign and became the national campaign for people's right to information. When it became the national campaign for people's right to information, Justice P.B. Sawant was chairperson of the Press Council of India, who passed away 2 days ago, was a chair, and under his guidance, a law was framed called the Right to Information Act. This Right to Information Act was framed by Justice Sawant, and he sent it to all the various, to the central government, to all the state governments, to the prime minister, to all the chief ministers, saying now you must implement this, pass this act, pass this bill and make it an act. It finally, since nobody drafted the act, we drafted the act and we took it to Parliament. But before that, I think because we put it together so quickly, some of our slides are back and forth. So will you please go to slide number 14 now, and then we'll go back to the other slides. If you go to slide number 14, you will see that there is a woman on the screen, Sushila. She went with us to Delhi when we wanted to present this case to Parliament and to everybody else. And a reporter asked her, what can you do as a semi-literate woman? And she said, he asked her, how much have you studied? She said, I've studied up to the 4th class. Since the slide is in English, I will speak in Hindi. Usko पूछा कि भाई तुम चौथी पास हो, तुम करोगी क्या वहां जाके? तो उसने जवाब दिया, उसने कहा कि मैं मेरी जानकारी में है, मेरे बेटे को मैं 10 रुपए देकर दुकान बेचती हूँ और वो वापस आता है तो मैं हिसाब लेती हूँ. ये सरकार मेरे नाम से अरबों खरबों रुपए खर्च करती है, मैं हिसाब नहीं लूंगी क्या? हमारा पैसा, हमारा हिसाब. So she demanded that information was a right under the Constitution, that for every elected representative, hisab giving was a part of the nature of the relationship. Hisab means accounts, accounting for, accountability, accounts, all are in a part of the relationship between the people who vote and the people who govern. And this is part of the mandate of the RTI campaign. Well, now, will you please go back to slides number 10, 11 and 12, please. The law was passed with very great difficulty. It was passed with an 11-year struggle. We sat on the streets in every state. The state passed laws first. After the state passed laws, the central government passed a law based on the state laws and strengthened it. When I was in National Advisory Council between 2005, 6 and 2009, because of the pressure of political will as well as the immense popularity of this demand, a law was drafted, sent to Parliament, and it stayed in Parliament. It went to the Standing Committee. We went and testified in front of the Standing Committee, and there were 154 amendments made to the law in the Standing Committee. In case you don't know what a Standing Committee is, a Standing Committee is set up in Parliament to allow people to go and debate about the draft law that is placed in Parliament so that our voices also get into it. So it was a very intense debate between the people and the state totally within constitutional norms, within the notion of electoral democracy, within the notion of institutional democracy, within the institution of responsibility, with the feeling that people own the country as much as people who govern the country. The people who live and toil, the people who teach, the people who do innumerable jobs are all equal citizens in a democracy, and that is what the Constitution promises us. It promises us equality. Some of us play different roles, so those who govern, but they don't have impunity. They don't have the right to do what they want without consulting or talking to people. And that's precisely why the right to information law is such a vital law, because it lays down the basics where I can ask a question and I can demand information, and I have a right to get the information in 30 days. If I don't get the information in 30 days, the person who denies me that right is liable to a fine if that information is available and that information is not provided. And that makes me somewhat more equal than I was with the authorities who govern. I was an IAS officer, and I know what happens in government, and I know how arbitrary decisions are taken. It's not as if every government servant is a responsible government servant. Many government servants are not responsible government servants. So you cannot have one law for one set of government servants and another set of law for another set of government servants. No matter who it is, from the topmost echelons of the state to the bottommost clerk, everybody is liable to be equally liable to produce information when on demand. And I don't think anyone can be removed from this list of responsible people who can give the information. And so when the law was passed, then the law also demanded for information to be placed on the website. And many parts of the information were put on the website. But there was another law passed called Manrega, the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act has a provision where it says that all information must be placed in the public domain. And in the public domain, so they have a website. And in that website, there is all the information that you need for projecting information to the people. But in projecting that information to the people, websites are not accessible to everyone who is an Indian citizen. So for that reason, these web walls were formed, and you can see here the information about materials on the NREGA website painted on the wall. And that wall is critically important because for people who walk that way, they can see how much material, how much cement, how many trolleys of sand, how much of stone have all been dropped at the work site, and have they really come or not? And this is a critically important thing, and that's why this and the next slide, where it shows the hundreds of names of the workers on the NREGA website, takes information to the people, making quite sure that they in fact can be responsible, and they can be also have the right to question authority. Anywhere, whether you don't question authority, authority becomes extremely subverted, authority becomes offensive, and authority becomes arbitrary. And we all know that in our interface with authority, that authority can only be within a critical and a moral frame. The moral frame is provided by the Constitution, but the critical frame is provided by the people of the country. And people of this country then use their critical faculties in very, very small ways to see what has happened. Let me tell you two stories. One, I'm going to tell you the story of what happened in 1994, even before we sat on a public protest, when we asked for minimum wages in a village. When we asked for minimum wages in a village, we were told that minimum wages were not paid because people were not at the work site, but people were at the work site. So when we looked over, when we had the inquiry and the subdivisional magistrate conducted the inquiry, we looked at the pages he was examining, and we found there was a company registered called Bhairunath and Sons. And we said, Bhairunath and Sons? Where? In a town called Bhim, next to which our small village is located, Devdungri. So we said, but there is no company called Bhairunath and Sons in Bhim. So we went further, investigated, and we found that this was a completely mythical company, a fraudulent company, set up by the block development officer, the junior engineer, his wife, and another person. And they decided that they were going to flush funds from the government to themselves whenever they felt like it. So it was amazing how they went from that, and they took that money and didn't give anything to the people, and there were estimated 36 lakhs of embezzlement. So no sales tax paid, no income tax paid, and all this because of a small inquiry on minimum wages. The enormity of the fraud can only be traced from bottom up. You cannot trace fraud from top to bottom. You have to trace it from bottom to top, because unlike the logic of gravity, money flows from bottom to top. It doesn't come from top to bottom. The money is taken from people at the lowest levels. So whether it is Thanedar or whether it is the BDO, or whether it is at that level that really corruption happens, and then corruption is mandated by people in power because they keep quiet and they don't question where the money is coming from. So therefore, it's extremely important to get the act of questioning into our public life. It's very important because it's actually when we interface with power that we understand that power is vulnerable, power is liable to pressure, power has to be decentralized, power has to be made accountable. And for all this, questioning is critically important. And my vote gives me the right to question. It is not a sleeping vote for 5 years. It gives me the right to question my member of the parliament. It gives me the right to question my member of the Legislative Assembly. When we were making the law at that time with Justice Sawant, and before, when we made the first draft in the National Academy of Administration, the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration in Mussoorie, we were debating on what the law should contain as a negative list and a positive list. And one of the most important contributions was made by the then director, Dr. N.C. Saxena, who said what the elected representative can see, the citizen can see, because what a representative can see, the sovereign can see. I send somebody to power. If that person is authorized to see something, I am authorized to see that. So there is a line, there's an override in the act which mandates that what the representative can see, the citizen can see. So whatever a member of the Legislative Assembly or the member of Parliament can see, you and I can see as a right. And this is a very important right in the act. The other important right in the act is that Section 4, which mandates that all the information must be disclosed, not waiting for right to information applications. If in fact all the information is disclosed, there will be no right to information petitions and appeals and letters. If we fail in that transparency, then there will be a right to know and there will be applications. What is the problem if we are correct and if we are right? There is no problem at all in disclosing all this information to the people. There is no problem in saying, and of course, if there is a difference of opinion, there is a difference of opinion, but it is not corruption and it is not arbitrary use of power. And policy, when it's made, finally should also be in the public domain so that people can see what policy is being made, how it's being made, and for whom it's being made. So if the one hand, we need to know to stop corruption, on the other hand, we need to know for protecting our rights as citizens. Both these rights are equally critically important. And the right to information law looked at both these factors and brought in a law which was a law for the people and by the people, and it was with the government. Nothing could have been a better demonstration of democratic principles and democratic processes than the right to information law. I really feel proud, and I feel proud that I'm an Indian citizen because of the right to information law. I realize that it's a country in which a law such as this can be framed. It's a country which has a huge future, not restricting freedom of expression, not restricting the right to express oneself, not restricting, but giving full liberty, but yet living within the mandated moral space that a government and a constitution should guarantee us. The constitution does guarantee it to us, but the government should also guarantee it to us. We cannot be framed and we cannot be made liable for persecution and prosecution when we state facts. It should not be possible. If we state things that are not facts, then there are processes under the law which examine us for not telling the truth. But it does not necessarily mandate the extremist action that many of which is happening today, which is untenable and unacceptable in a democracy. In a democracy, the right to freedom of expression is fundamental. Because of all the rights, it's the most fundamental right. I come from Tamil Nadu. A very famous Tamilian poet called Subramanya Bharati wrote a poem in which he said, if I cannot sing about my hunger, if I cannot talk about my hunger, how will my hunger be mitigated? How will someone address my hunger? So the right to express my hunger or to express my opinion on my starvation, on my ill health, on my lack of wages is the first step towards getting towards a redressal of that and to go forwards. Now, the Right to Information Act, for instance, has been an important thing. And I just wanted to go to directly to, I've talked about up to slide 15. I would like to go to slide 17. In slide 17, you see two quotations by Albert Einstein and Edmund Burke. And it is true that if we should not be afraid of transparency, there is a fear of transparency in people who have power. And this fear has to be addressed and it has to be curtailed. None of us should have the fear of transparency. And Albert Einstein, one of our most important minds in the last 100 years, said those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. If you know something, then you must have the duty to act to redress it. If that action does not take place, then the RTI slogan comes into place. Corruption is injustice and silence is consent. So those of who are silent, those of us who are silent, knowing that injustice is happening, are part of that injustice and we are corrupt. So it's extremely important to know that if we are silent, we are part of that corruption. And to break that silence, Right to Information Act has given us a very just, responsible framework in which we do not go beyond the boundaries of justice. We do not go beyond the boundaries of the norms of constitutional morality, but yet we have the right to say what is wrong with my country. If I do not have the right to say what is wrong with my governance and with my country, with my government that is my concern, no matter which party or which political unit they may belong to, no matter what it is, whichever shade of opinion that they may have in before their election, once they become members of seats of power and occupy status of power, they are my representatives. And for that reason, they have an obligation to respond to me. This feeling will bring in a very mature and a very responsible democracy. It also outlines my obligations and my responsibilities. I cannot be responsible and I cannot be offensive. For me, if I'm so, there are other laws. There's the Indian Penal Code, there's the Criminal Procedure Code. There are many codes. There is the Indian Evidence Act. There are many acts which will restrain me from being so. But for the people in power, they have to understand that they have to be welcoming an open system and an open government. That is why I was part of a very big international campaign called Open Government Partnership, which requested that all governments be open and open up their information to the people. If you go to the most advanced of governments, which I think is in Sweden, Norway, and Finland, they have nothing which is not shown to the people. They show everything to the people. There are no frictions in society. People function within frames. There is very little corruption. And those governments run very well. I was so surprised that I went in, I could see any file. I was not even a citizen of Norway, but I could see a file. I could open a file. I could read what was written, because if it was within the Norwegian system of mandated Norwegian system, legal system, and its constitutional system, it was correct by those terms, then what was wrong in showing it to them? I will come back to a quotation from, if you can please show slide number 18. I will go back to my origins of this whole talk when I showed you that mud hut. I'll go to people of this country, I am so proud of being an Indian, because I know the ordinary Indian who lives in those villages, who lives in the slums, who lives in the streets of this country, who has not had access to anything that I have had access to as a person of privilege, is very intelligent, is a person with great common sense and with a great deal of compassion. They are not people who want violence. They do not want retribution. They do not want people to be violently dealt with, but yet they want justice. And this is what Dr. Ambedkar's constitution guarantees us, that we will get justice within a mandated form of the procedures and processes which Mahatma Gandhi delineated, of a peaceful civil disobedience, of peaceful resistance, of non-violent protest, and of non-violent demands being stated. And if these two sides of the independence movement do not prevail over a very, very multiple cultured, multi-cultured, multi-layered, multi-caste, multi-religious, multi-gendered community that we are today, we don't have the scope of really succeeding in anything. Economic progress is only possible if there's social progress. Economic progress is only possible if there's justice. Economics without justice will collapse. Anything that is without justice will collapse. So what did we do? We have to address this issue. And that's why the Right to Information law is a law which inches us towards a sense of justice and a sense of equality, with very simple questions asked of multiple areas, from the ration shop down below to the government, to the biggest status in government. We can ask questions which will only lead to bringing in veracity and integrity and probity to a government to make it a better country for all of us. In this, we have been invited, I don't know how many times I've lectured on RTI. This must be the, I don't know, 400th lecture, 500th lecture, I don't know how many we have delivered all over the place on Right to Information. We have been invited by many institutions when we were sitting on a dharna, mind you, protesting against the government. We were invited by the government to go to their institution, which was the Civil Rights Institution, which in Rajasthan is called the HCM RIPA, to come and address civil servants on the right to information. And we went. From the Dharna Sthal, we went to the institute to address people who are going to become future rulers. And they told us to come. We went. I went. Shankar and Nikhil, who are my colleagues, we all started MKSs together. We went. Lal Singh Ji was also part of the MKSs. He also started the MKSs. He also went with us. And Narayan, who was a sarpanch in a village panchayat, also went with us. All five of us went, and they were a little stumped because they wanted one, it became three, and then it became five. So they gave us, all of us, 5 minutes to talk each. And I spoke for 5 minutes, Nikhil spoke for 5 minutes, and Shankar spoke for 5 minutes. But when it came to Lal Singh Ji's turn, he said, "Main apne baat, since the slide is in English, I'll speak in Hindi." उन्होंने कहा कि मुझे 2 मिनट बहुत है, मैं अपने बात रख दूंगा. He said कि हम लोग यहाँ पे आए हैं क्योंकि हमें सूचना का अधिकार नहीं मिलेगा, तो हम सोचते हैं कि हम जिएंगे या नहीं जिएंगे. हम जो यहाँ पे आए हैं, जो गरीबी और अन्य स्थितियों में रहते हैं, हम सोचते हैं कि सूचना का अधिकार नहीं मिलेगा तो क्या हम जिएंगे या नहीं जिएंगे. आप ये सोचते हैं, पॉइंटिंग टू द सिविल सर्वेंट्स, आप ये सोचते हैं कि सूचना का अधिकार मिल जाए तो क्या आपकी कुर्सी रहेगी या नहीं रहेगी. आप ये सोचते हैं कि सूचना का अधिकार मिल जाएगा तो आपकी कुर्सी रहेगी या नहीं रहेगी. मगर दोस्तों, हम सबको मिलकर सोचना चाहिए कि क्या ये देश रहेगा या नहीं रहेगा. Actually, the Right to Information Act is the most nationalist of all acts. It is an act which talks about the well-being of a country, where every pie is spent in the proper place, where everybody takes a decision according to the mandated law of the land, according to the constitution. And Lal Singh Ji is 100% right in what he said. He was so right. And the statement has gone on all the websites, so that this became the slogan which was engraved on a big award that was given to the MKSs by an established university in Delhi, when they gave us the award, there was Lal Singh's quotation engraved on that plaque that they gave it to us. They gave us. I'll end my discourse with just saying one thing more, quoting a very famous South African poet called Jeremy Cronin, that Loktantra hai kya? What is democracy? It is talking truth to power. It's making truth powerful and power truthful. I am talking to people who are living in the land of Gandhi. Gandhiji said, experiments with truth. सच्चाई क्या है? सच्चाई की ओर हम कैसे पहुंचे? सही लोकतंत्र क्या है? जो सच शक्ति को सच बोल सके, जो शक्ति को सच्चाई की ओर सच्चाई शक्ति को सच बना सके और शक्ति को सच्चाई की ओर ले जा सके, वो ही है लोकतंत्र. So democracy is really talking truth to power, making truth powerful and power truthful. I thank you all for bearing with me. I apologize for this PowerPoint. I was only informed this morning. This has been put together from other older PowerPoints. It was not drafted for you. So if there have been any discrepancies between the PowerPoint and what I said, I crave your indulgence. Thank you all very much. सबको बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, धन्यवाद और नमस्कार.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful talk and master talk on the journey of the Right to Information Act. With your permission, we can take some questions from the audience side and the participant side and the student side.
Yes, please. For how many minutes? For 10 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. Around 8 to 10 minutes or 12 minutes maximum. The question is from one of our students of the mass communication. The question is that, madam, what kind of the reforms is required in the Right to Information Act?
Before we go to reforms,
yes,
should I speak in Hindi or in English?
In any language, ma'am, you can speak, no problem.
Mixed both bilingually?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
देखिए, सुधार की जरूरत तो बाद में आएगी. पहले तो उस जितना था उसको भी कमजोर कर दिया ना कानून को. The law has been made weaker. The first thing we'll have to ensure that the law is not further weakened. See, for any law to be effectively implemented, we need an independent body. So the Right to Information law has a commission. The commission was an independent commission. The commission's position has been weakened. The previous governments tried to amend the law. We resisted and we stopped the amendment. But this government has amended the rules. In amending the rules, what they have done is to make the independence they have harmed the independence of the commission. The commission, unless it is independent of government, cannot take the right decision because government is a party to it. But they have weakened the structure. So I would say that we should go back at least first step to what was, have a strong commission, and a commission that is on tenure for 5 years, which doesn't have its salaries fixed and its tenure fixed by a sitting government. Because no matter which government is in power, government is party. So therefore you have to have an independent commission. So let's go back to that first and try and get that set right. Then we'll talk about further reforms.
And ma'am, what is your opinion about what's the differences, the Official Secret Act 1923 and the Right to Information Act, and after the coming the force of the Right to Information Act in 2005, what kind of the impact on the Official Secret Act 1923?
The Right to Information Act overruled the Official Secrets Act. And therefore, you cannot, for asking for information, invoke the Official Secrets Act at all. You can't say, I will not give you the information because there's an Official Secrets Act. But there are other rules now. There are many laws passed which have said that they will not come under the Right to Information Act, which is not like, for instance, the many of the laws recently passed, like the donation to political parties. We've been saying that political parties must also come under the Act. NGOs must also come under the Act. We must all be under the Act. Nobody should be left out from under the Act. We felt. It is government who's been kept pushing us out of the Act. We think everyone should be under the Act. After all, it's equality we're talking about. So in that position, we must all be under the Act. But look at it now, we have this electoral bonds. We can't see it. We can't see the Prime Minister Care Fund. There are so many things which are happening, which are outside the purview of the right to information now, without invoking the Official Secrets Act. So laws that are being made now are stepping away from the transparency regime. And it isn't good even for the people who govern. I think because if you're transparent, then your credibility and probity is very high. I've lived a transparent life. When I went to the IAS Academy once to talk, I was asked, since I live on minimum wages, I was wearing a Sambalpuri sari. A Sambalpuri sari is an expensive sari. So they asked me, what is the cost of the sari? And how can you wear the sari on your minimum wage salary? And how can you say, so you have to tell us how you got the sari. The directorial staff of Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy said, no, she needn't answer this question. It's a personal question. I said, no, it's a public question. He's completely within his rights to ask this question. So I said, the sari was presented to me by my friends, and I can give you their phone number and you can call them and ask them if in fact they gave me a Sambalpuri sari. And since I'm coming to an elite organization, I worn the sari because I felt that I respect you all. So I'll wear a sari of good value and good looks. So you can ask him. So I think nothing is what is the problem? I can wear expensive saris sometimes, though I earn a wage of 6,000 rupees, provided I have not got that sari through ill-gotten means. What is the problem? So actually transparency is invigorating. It empowers you. It gives you agency of a tremendous sort. And that's what we have to understand and not be worried and scared about transparency. It's only when there are things in the area of gray or things in which we are unsure of ourselves that transparency is a problem.
One more thing, that what kind of the problem is faced by the journalist when they are use this Right to Information Act and they are not getting the full-fledged information from the various government and the non-government organization when they want to give the reference of this act. So how they can get the more and more information, and they collect the more and more information for the newspapers and electronic media and various other kind of the media?
Actually, we have to fight two battles. One is the battle to get information through the right to information, where we have to insist that we will get information and we can persevere in getting information. The other battle is the right to freedom of expression, because so long as we are only asking about ration shops, nobody says anything. The moment we ask something which is of a more sensitive or vulnerable nature, then they say that we can't get the information and they proceed against us. So we have to say that all information will be provided. There can be provisos. You can black out some information if you think that is vulnerable to be misused. But even that is not to be done, in my opinion. If you give the information, in any case in India, they say that information is always available. You can forbid people from giving and sharing information. सबको सब कुछ मालूम हो जाता है. Our society is like this. So legitimately क्यों नहीं दे देते हो? Give it legitimately so that at least the correct information will be tabled. So journalists must persevere with using RTI. They have persevered in using RTI. Much of the data that has come out because of RTI in all the governments. And I'm not speaking of one single government. I'm speaking of all governments, of all political hues. Information has come out because of use of the RTI.
And madam, another question is, what is your next step to make it more powerful to Right to Information Act, reform in the Right to Information Act? What is your next step, ma'am?
I said before, I would not think of reform now. I think of getting back what I've lost. I've lost so much. I'll think of getting it back first. What is the reform I will do unless I get back the powers I've already lost? So those powers have to come back. I have to get those powers back. I have to get the whistleblowers law back in Parliament. I have to get that passed in Parliament so that people who tell the truth are not killed. 1,000 people have lost their lives because of asking questions on RTI. I want them protected as human rights defenders, as governance defenders, defenders of the Constitution. For that, I need a Whistleblowers Act. The Whistleblowers Act has not seen the light of day. So I would like the Whistleblowers Act to come into Parliament again and be passed. Can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, anyone. Hello? Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Off the line.
So finally, what kind of the message you want to give?
Well, I would like to.
Can I repeat the question or you got the question?
No, I didn't get the question.
Yes, madam. Request is the final question is the what kind of the message you want to give to the journalists and those people want to get the more and more exact information from the government sector, maybe other sector. So how they can use and how they can get the information exactly.
I think I answered that. Did my answer not, was it not heard? I said we have to use a RTI law even.
No, I heard, madam.
So I would like to say to all of you.
But in this, yes.
So please say it.
In these circumstances, because there is a less power, so how they can use in better manner to it? Because reforms is also required, and
we should break up the information we want into smaller bits. We should persist in asking for information. We should continue to file applications. Though we are 60 to 80 lakhs, which is 6 to 8 million, we are still on less than 1% of the Indian population. We must make sure that at least 30% of the Indian population uses the RTI. We people have to campaign. You have to campaign for more people to use the RTI so that it becomes, everyone understands that it's just normal. Like registering a complaint that your gas doesn't work, you also register an RTI, so that it should become a normal part of our lives. So we have to work hard, all of us as citizens of this country, to make it more functional, better used, and to regain the lost power back again into the whole movement.
Thank you very much, ma'am, to enlighten to us, enlighten to participants for a wonderful talk and master talk on the journey of the information and enlighten the reforms is done, when is the force, and you told the various of the Right to Information Acts. So thank you on behalf of the party management, on behalf of the party, and this we thank you and want to. Not only webinar platform, we also invite you through this webinar platform physically with our students and especially from the journalism students.
I'm sorry,
I
can't hear you clearly.
Dr. Rawat, your voice is interrupted. Might be your connectivity is not that good, or bandwidth may not be getting properly.
Thank you, Dr. Patel.
Yes, madam. Yes, really, I learned a lot from this basic concept that you are the pioneer of drafting this act. No doubt, being government, we have used it, but what is the theme of that and how it has come up and how it is effective in a country like India? It is really in need of a day if it is 100% followed by. But nowadays, what happens that RTI activists, that one group has unnecessarily created, which creating unnecessary, because I was in Gujarat University, there was an RTI. So whatever the Singh Chena I was taking, whether it was spent from the Gujarat University budget or not, this type of RTI came to me. I surprised that.
No, but the thing is that we are a country of very good people but you and I, we
Yeah.
all have relations who are quirks.
Right.
We have it in our families. So when they ask a question which is slightly off,
No,
you
maybe.
just provide whatever information there is and say, this is all I have. And you
Yeah,
do what you like with it, finish, the matter ends. You
Yeah,
see,
yeah, yeah.
because and for those who are persistent questioners,
Hmm.
you cannot say that
No.
questions can't be received by them.
Yeah, yeah.
But you punch all their questions together and put one clerk on it to see what it is and say we've answered it. And if he asks the question again, you resend the previous information and say we've already sent it, we've already sent it, we've already sent it. There may be some quirks, but we have found in a survey we did that less than 1% misbehave.
Yeah, it's
99% behaves
small,
itself.
very small number.
Very
People are
small.
there, but overall, when they ask, we should provide the information. That's all.
That's right.
Mm.
And let me thank you very much for having me and for listening to me so patiently. It's
It's also-
always a pleasure to meet all of you. And I hope that we'll all become fellow beings struggling for a better India in
Sure.
which there's integrity, probity, and transparency, and food in the belly for this last man or woman, clothing for the last person on the line, proper education for their children, proper health for them, for which this whole right to information law began. And in the world over, sir, they say that this is the only law which is used so much. This
Very
is the
good.
only
Very
law
true.
which has come from the earth.
Very true. Very true.
So we should be very proud of this law and very proud of a democracy, which, though it has got such high rates of illiteracy, has been able to see with proper education and understanding the value of a democratic country. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Rawat, please. बंद करेंगे तो क्या?
BC sir, BC sir, are you there, sir?
So he is given such a power at the age of 23, 24 IS થઈને આવે અને સીધા તમે કલેક્ટર બનાવો અને એક તો એનામાં એક ગુસ્સો હોય ગંભલભલા દોડી હારે ઝઘડી જાય ને આમ તેમ તે પછી ધીરે ધીરે ગુજરાત ધારા 2 આવી છે દર વર્ષે એ આપણી કેડર હોય રેગ્યુલર ગુજરાત એક્ટિવિટી સર્વિસીસ
2 मिनट में खत्म कर.
એમાંથી